So Nolan is and was an incredible, just incredible soul. He was the person who, no matter where you were in life, what was going on, he was going to be your biggest cheerleader. And I can attest to that because after COVID, my sister was like, oh, you should do social media. And I'm like, oh, I don't want to do social media. I like to just watch others. And then Nolan was like, no, Mom, you should do it. I'll help you with the videos. I got you. And, just anytime I was like, oh, I just really don't want to do this anymore. Nolan was like, no, Mama, you haven't posted today. And I'm like, I don't want to post. I'm tired.
Yeah.
But, that's the kind of person he was. He was God-fearing, God-loving. That boy had faith beyond measure. He was just a bright light. And he was our bright light. As far as that day goes, I went to work and he was making salmon. So he was FaceTiming me as I'm trying to see patients kind of in between, of course, not answering the phone in the room. And he's like, hey, Mama, how does this look? Is this enough season? Like, what am I supposed to do with this? And I was like, okay. I was like, you don't have to do that. And he's like, no, I'm going to take care of it. I was like, okay, sure. And so he finishes cooking, get home. He's like, yeah, what you know about this? And he was, guys, when I tell you, he loved to joke. Like, he was just one of those people. He wanted everyone around him to smile, be happy, feel comfortable and accepted. And that is the kind of person God made him. Us as parents, we definitely had that influence, but Nolan was just naturally a peacemaker.
Yeah.
And so after that, it was, ate, and then he got ready to go. He did his normal, hugged us up. I love you, Mom. I was like, be safe, knowing this was going to be his last weekend before going back to school because football was starting, the summer training was starting. And this was his second year at Southwest. And so we knew this was going to be a big year for him. Dad and him had been training and doing all these things and really just kind of sitting with him and letting him know, like, hey, we're going to the next stage in your life as well as, your football career. So the focus was there and he was ready.
So he leaves that day.
He leaves that day with, he drives his car and he told us kind of a general, like, hey, we're going to go to the island. Like, we knew that, staying at Jack's house. And Jack's was a friend I think we've met in passing before. And that's the thing, I always say there's a difference in meeting someone, knowing of someone, and then knowing someone. Knowing implies that we've sat down, we've had discussions about your hopes, your dreams, knowing you, okay, hey, he stayed the night at my house, which Wyatt, one of his friends, he had stayed at our house a couple of times. And then Jack's, again, that was one I just maybe saw him passing a few times. There's only a handful of young men that we actually knew, like, he grew up with. And when I say grew up, I'm saying from like first grade, they've known each other all through high school now that they're graduated. And that would be like Jalen and Javon, LeBaron. Those are kids that we knew. So it's been hard seeing all this kind of play out.
Yeah.
And, these are people that he considered friends.
Yes. Dad, I want to ask you, because it was Warren Hudson, one of the people that he traveled with, who called to alert you all that Nolan was missing.
Yes.
So we know at 5:44, the boat returns, Nolan is not there. At 11 p.m., he calls to say Nolan is missing. I wonder if either of you, whoever wants to answer, what happened in those few hours that prompted Warren to be concerned?
I'm not quite sure what would prompt him to be concerned, but all I can say is what I did that day. So me and my sister, we made an order of pancit, which is a Filipino noodle dish for one of our friends. They were having a big family get together and we really didn't have anything planned for the 4th. So me and my sister are, cleaning up, and this is about 8. And she's like, hey, Nolan hasn't texted us. And that was the thing. Nolan was really big with communication with us, right? And so I call him, doesn't answer. I end the call. Call back, and this is probably, I think, maybe around 8. Don't quote me on the times, guys. So then I call again later around 8, still no answer. And then I want to say I called one more time, and I think that was at like.
Thank you to everybody who's coming in. Please hit that like button. Please subscribe to the channel and help us get to 1K subs. Also, please let us know where you're actually watching from. This is the Nolan Wells family giving their account of the night of 4th of July heading into the morning of July the 5th. And we'll break down some little parts of it once she finishes speaking. But want to let you guys see this. This actually was today.
10:48. So I'm in the kitchen, my phone rings. Now this is probably like early 11 o'clock, somewhere around there. Phone rings when I make it back to the phone and I'm like, whose number is this? because, you know, we get weird phone calls sometimes. They didn't leave a message. Number pops back up. I pick up the phone because it says maybe Warren. And I'm like, Warren. So this is 11:07. That's per my cell phone records. So I answered the phone. He's like, hey, Miss Christine, have you seen or talked to Nolan? I said, no. Why? He should be with you guys. And he said, oh, no. Well, you know, when we went to the island, there was a girl named Katie that he met, and he had decided to stay behind. I said, what? Because we know our child.
So that's the first question I want to pose for everyone, because we have to have a conversation. For any parents who are watching this currently on the live, or if you watch this on the rewatch, we all have experienced moments where our children do things that could be out of their character. We understand that this family is grieving, but we also have to be matter of fact with saying that not every child is going to make the same decision every day. We as adults don't even make the same decisions every day. So, and I understand everybody has to keep a certain side of the story going or a certain narrative going, which is okay. But with that being said, we have to understand that just because as parents we know our children doesn't mean that our children won't do something outside of what we expect them to do. There's no perfect child and there's no perfect parent.
And Nolan isn't one to be like, oh, well, I'm just going to throw caution to the wind and I'm going to stay here with this girl that I just met. So I'm on the phone with him. Now I'm in a panic. I'm running to my room. Elmore was in bed watching a different movie. And I'm like frantic. He's like, what's going on? I'm like, Nolan is missing. I'm trying to pull up the GPS as I'm talking to him. And at some point he tells me that, I was like, well, you know, his phone says GPS Life 360, not Snapchat.
Right.
Life 360 says that he's on land. And he was like, well, no, I mean, you know, well, we have his phone. And I'm like, wait, what? And I'm like, okay. Because at that point, you're telling me, this is coming from Warren, don't worry about it. We're going to find him. It's going to be okay. Don't tell me not to worry. This is my child, my flesh and blood that I brought into this world. And you're telling me not to worry. Absolutely not. So then it was after the phone call ended, of course, asking him for information. What was he wearing? He was like, last seen, Northwest tip, black shorts, sunglasses. That's important. So I end up calling DMR. Spoke with the DMR. She took all the
For our audience, DMR.
So DMR is because he went missing on the island. They are basically the marine people, right? They're the ones who's going to launch the boats to go into the water and all that. But before getting off the phone with Warren, he was like, hey, I know some people at Coast Guard. I said, okay. He's like, I'm gonna call Coast Guard. You call DMR. Get on the phone with DMR. I give the young lady the information, and she tells me.
And right there, we can't take away the new trust that she built in Warren, right? She initially said that Warren can't tell her how to feel, but she was okay with Warren taking the phone call to the Coast Guard and her doing DMR. So at some point, for someone not to be the friend of your son, for someone not to be someone that you recognize, you still did trust that they would give the call to Coast Guard, which people did question that throughout this investigation of, did they call? When did the call happen? We do know where we currently stand with that. We know those calls were made. With that being said, we just have to understand that there's two sides to every story, and that's the most important part. Again, there's not enough evidence for anyone to be found guilty or any foul play at this moment.
Hey, you know, I got this. Let me call you back. And she was like, I'm not sure if this is going to be in our jurisdiction, essentially. So then she calls back and she tells me, okay, yeah, you know, we spoke with Coast Guard. And I'm like, okay, but they're like, this isn't our jurisdiction. You have to contact the city of Ocean Springs. I said, okay, hang up the phone, call an Ocean Springs Police Department. They say, hey, you have to physically come down and give a report. I said, okay. So on our way, because we don't live that far from the police station, on our way there, I was like, well, let me stop by the hospital, because there's a hospital that's maybe 5 minutes up the road from our house. Stop by there. I'm like, hey, have you guys seen this kid? Has he been brought in? The lady's like, no, ma'am. You know, we hadn't. I said, okay, thank you. Run out. We go to the police department, get to the police station. And the officer basically says, again, this is out of our jurisdiction. And at that point, I'm like, my God, who am I supposed to talk to? Who is supposed to help me with this? So then he said, it's going to be, you would have to call DMR. I was like, we've already called DMR. DMR said it's not in their jurisdiction. So we end up, I think at some point I had called Jackson County Sheriff's Office. Yeah. So she calls back and she's like, hey, are you there? I said, yes, we're here. But he's telling us the same thing you guys told us, which is no, we can't take it. She gets on the phone with the police officer. Now this is Jackson County Sheriff's Department speaking with the Ocean Springs Police Department. Ocean Springs Police Department is saying, this is why we can't take this information. She says, okay. He gives me the phone back. And she's like, okay, I'm just going to take it. I'm just going to take the information. And we met an officer. It was after midnight. Right? Yeah, it was somewhere after midnight. Met him in the McDonald's parking lot, gave him the information. He was just like, okay, thanks. I was like, where is the urgency? And so
and we also have to remember protocol, guys. There's moments where we can't even get an Amber Alert until your child is missing for so many days. And I understand that a parent could be reacting out of emotions, but again, here at the Faceless Father, we want to bring some objectivity and subjectivity here. Like, we want to be very transparent. Again, her emotions are warranted in this moment, but this is normal protocol. No one is reported missing that quickly. And I'll try to find you guys the guidance of when the hours are for a person to actually be identified as missing.
As far as we know, there were no boats on the water that night. His high school football coach, Coach Bramlett, texted Elmore that morning. He said, hey man, I got a boat. Because again, we don't have boats. Let me make that very clear. We do not have a boat. We're not boating people. We don't do water like that. Okay. So Coach Bramlett's like, hey, I got a boat. So we was like, great, let's go. We're on the water. We go out there. We walk the island. Cell phone works perfectly fine. I actually had almost an entire conversation with my grandmother, who was in a panic, as we're walking this island looking for anything.
I just want to pause there. The cell phone worked fine, because in the reporting, there's been so much reporting that there's poor cell phone reception. And this is some of the disputes that we have about that night. Dad, feel free to jump in here, because they're saying he met this young lady, Katie, and that he stayed back. According to the reporting, Katie is saying no. He said he was going to go with his friends. According to the reporting, the friends say, no, he left us his phone because there was no reception. Dad, have you found any consistencies? Have you spoken directly with any of his friends?
Well, the first inconsistency was you called me and tell me my son stayed on the island to talk to a girl. My son would never do that. That's not in his character.
And I do want to give you guys the facts. I researched it in Mississippi. There is no required 24, 48, or 72-hour waiting period to notify somebody of a missing person. The entry should be made as soon as possible once the supporting documentation is on file. So once that given in, the police officer will need to do that. It says one distinction matters: reported missing entered into NCIC is being the subject of a special public alert are not necessarily the same thing. So somebody can be reported missing, but that doesn't mean that it's going to then go out to like an Amber Alert or things of that nature. It says applying to specifically the Nolan Wells timeline, the important factual question would be, what time was he last known to be accounted for? Which that's where a lot of people don't know, which would made it hard to actually initiate a missing person report. So just wanted to bring you guys all the details here at the Faceless Father so that we're not just jumping to conclusions.
I didn't raise none of my kids to do that. The second thing is, you say he doesn't have his phone. He doesn't leave his phone. I would wake up sometimes in the morning and Nolan would have his phone here right in my face. And I'm waking up cussing the fussing like, boy, you don't get the camera on my face. And he just laughing and giggling and stuff like that. So it's twice. To me, there's two lies that told me as a father. Like I said, we went on the island. And actually a classmate of mine called me that morning as we were going out to the island with Nolan's coach. He's like 40 miles away. He calls me, hey man, I got the boat. Me and my boys, we're gonna go out there and help you look. I didn't call him, he called me. And we're gonna start on this end. I said, well, we're probably gonna start on the other end. So me, my wife, Coach Bramlett, and a high school classmate of mine were the only, we were the first ones out there looking. Like I said, we docked the boat, got out the boat, walked on the island. She had a whole conversation with her grandmother on the island, got back on the boat, went back around the island. I guess that would be the north side, facing the Gulf of Mexico. I get another phone call. So my phone worked fine. So this whole thing about not having phone service, I don't know. I don't know if it's the carrier or what, but ours worked fine. I think that was around maybe 8 o'clock.
Yeah, because we finished up around.
Who was it? Jackson County or
Jackson County Sheriff
finally showed up.
Yeah,
a couple of boats, they finally showed up. By that time, I was like, he's not out here. I was more focused that he was at someone's house.
That was
so. That's where my hopes and feelings were. So we left. The county stayed out there. My friend He stayed out there because he called. He was like, well, we're gonna stay out here a little bit longer. I said, okay, I appreciate it. So we leave. Then I would say maybe a couple hours later, my friend calls me back and he said, well, we're gonna give it and go, but he said, look, I can gas the boat back up, and if you want to go back out there, we can go back out there. I said, I don't want to go back out to the island. I have a feeling that he's not there, and I don't want to go back to the island. So he said, he offered, he said, well, if we do, we can go right now. I said, don't worry about it. I appreciate you coming out there. But he said at that time that helicopters were out there, more Coast Guard, more people out there.
Mm-hmm.
So we get back on there, and as far as the keys, was it that night? Or was it
That was that night.
That was the night to call. Okay, let me back up. As far as getting the car back, after we get.
This is going to be a very vital part to listen to the details that the father provides about getting the keys back, because when we play the interview with the three young men, you will see that there are some similarities and some truth that kind of correlate the two conversations together, which will say that both people are telling the truth about the encounter, but just saying it in different ways. So I would highly encourage you guys to pay attention to this area.
Report to Jackson County, the sheriff department that night. We were trying to figure out who to get a report to. We had a friend in the family that located his phone.
Mm-hmm.
We wasn't there to get the phone, but apparently there was some kind of friction in getting his phone.
Yeah.
We don't know what the friction was.
So the phone and the key were at the same location, which was Jack's house.
Okay.
And again, all of these kids share their locations on Snapchat. And so she was like, hey, I can go pick his phone up, not thinking that his car is there, which she stopped everything she was doing. Her and the boys, they went out. Like, we were all out searching for him that night. And yeah, like Omar was saying, there was an issue, some type of friction. The cops ended up coming and they left. And so then kind of the same thing when we came to pick up the key, Elmore went up there asking for the key, didn't know where the key was. And all of a sudden we know where the key is.
But see, this is another thing that bothered me. So when we got to the house, it was some of his other friends were there, and they were, beating on the door, like, what Nolan there, beating on the door, trying to get in the house. So I walk up to the door and I'm calming them down. Cause for one, okay, you're loud. Two, you're in these people's house. So if you take these people's house up, that's gonna be a whole nother issue. I don't want y'all bothering. And three, I need you guys to calm down. And I need them to kind of trust me as being an adult so I can get something out of it. So I get.
And I'm not sure when you guys were following this case initially, the only person that they stated that went to the house was actually the friend of Christina. So now we're actually discovering that the father was actually present at the home as well. And now you're listening to him telling the young men or women, whoever was there, a group of them, to actually calm down. So if you notice about this, at the start of the show, we spoke about division, right? And everybody was already coming and initiating the divide. And I understand emotions are there, but there became a quick divide, and you can hear it here.
Them out the house. And then Jax finally come down the stairs, I guess in the room. Hair all messed up like he just woke up, whatever. I said, look, I'm Nolan's father. His car's outside. I need to get his car and all his personal effects that may be left over here. And he goes, oh man, Nolan was like my brother. I said, Nolan was like my brother. I said, well, if Nolan was like your brother, would you please go and get everything of his so I can get his car, I can go home. So he walks off. 2 or 3 minutes later, he come back. I don't see the keys. Okay. So I leave out the house. Go back outside, stand by the car. During that time, one of the guys that was in the house, one of the other friends, he was on the phone with a girl who was apparently there with them earlier that day. And she was telling him that his keys was on top of the Xbox in his room. So he goes back up to the door by himself. And we're still out by the car. And lo and behold, here comes the keys. So now to me, you lied to me 3 times. I don't believe nothing that you tell me. Me on out.
And this is Jax.
So also for y'all, when we watch the video of Jax, you're going to hear his side of this, saying that he wasn't aware where the keys were, also in this huge house. But then, if I'm not mistaken, the father just spoke that the friend told Jax where the keys were. So again, Jax is also going to talk to you guys about like what happened when he initially found the news out that they couldn't find Warren, which would possibly explain why the father said Jax came down and his hair was all over the place, looked like he was just waking up, because this all correlates. Again, here at the Faceless Father, we're just talking about the facts, and we're keeping the emotions out of it for myself for sure.
And eventually he does give you the keys.
Yeah, eventually.
But there was friction getting the keys.
Yes. So from one, you tell me my son is on left stay on the island with girl. 2, you have a.
I don't see why he's so frustrated about someone saying that your son decided to stay at an island with a female. If you look at the thumbnail today, it says, do our children always do the right thing? Like, just because we raise our children one way doesn't mean that they're automatically going to do everything that in that manner. Like, this is like almost exasperating a situation that already has enough negativity, but just trying to create a stronger narrative for how you felt about the people. That the mother initially came out every time a child came out that they weren't friends, but she said those people were who Nolan actually considered friends. And she said anybody that she would consider Nolan's friend, she would sit down and talk about their dreams and aspirations. That's not true. None of y'all who are watching this on the rewatch could tell me that you done sat down with every one of your son or daughter's friends and say, oh, what are you planning to do in the future? What are your goals? Some friends don't even stay around long enough for you to even want those details. So we just have to be factual. That's all.
Phone. And 3, you don't give me the kids when I ask. I don't know any father who would believe there's just, if one of my friends did that, I'm gonna be cordial with you, but I'm gonna watch you. And I just,
Ben, I want to ask you, because I'm hearing these two parents who essentially had to become search and rescue or law enforcement, looking for their own child with such a lack of urgency on behalf of law enforcement. Obviously, we're talking to Black journalists. We can't ignore the ugly racial history of Mississippi. I looked into the demographics.
And as you see, you guys really pay attention to this interview they're having right now on this stage, because later on today, we're going to cover the post interview of this show. And they're asking to leave race out of it, but every question keeps stemming back to the race, the historical rhetoric of Mississippi. We're asking one thing, but doing another. So, and again, guys, I understand that this is, at this point, you know that your son is no longer here, so the emotional state is higher. But prior to this, they were still just searching for Nolan. We can say that there were no sense of urgency, but none of us know what's actually going on. We're just taking everyone's word.
Graphics of the Jackson County Sheriff Department is quite asymmetrical, but also just the general attitude and the lack of value when it comes to Black life. Does this sound like a normal process for when an 18-year-old goes missing to you? What holes have you seen in your looking into this case?
Tiffany, that was the question that Christine and Elmore had when they first called us. They wanted the truth of what happened to their 18-year-old son, Nolan Wells. And they had concerns whether they were going to get a fair and impartial investigation. And from that day to this one, it has been the same objective: to have truth, transparency, and find out what happened to Nolan. They said, we want a thorough investigation, because when they found Nolan, they expressed to me that the sheriff had already said no foul play. And they was like, no, my son, he knows how to swim.
So now they're talking about two areas of the investigation, right? We're supposed to be sticking to what happened the night of the incident. Ben Crump is coming in on the aftereffect, not answering the question of the lady. So again, here we go with the timelines. We're supposed to be speaking about that night. So just pay attention.
Our son is a college athlete. Our son is in great shape. We don't believe that he just drowned and nobody knows nothing. Nobody saw nothing. I mean, there are about 300, 400 people on the island. And so that's what they were saying. We want to know what happened. We want truth. We want transparency. We don't want his death to be swept under the rug.
Well, just so to make sure the audience and the people watching at home know, so they did declare very quickly, as you're noting, that he drowned when his body was recovered on July 6th. Mom and dad and you all know that he is a student athlete, able to swim. On July 4th on Horn Island, it was very crowded. Certainly the suggestion is someone would have seen a child in distress. there is going to be the convening of a grand jury. Now, the DA of this area, Angel Myers McElrath, is a very out loud, proud Republican. If there is a U.S.
And here we go. Here we go. We're speaking about politics and not justice for Nolan. We continue to move the goalposts, and you can see that the grift is no longer about justice for Nolan. Guys, we understand that there's racist white people. We get it. We understand that Mississippi has racist history. We get it. Every state has some racism in it. But at the end of the day, this doesn't bring justice for Nolan.
Attorney appointed to this case. It will likely be a Trump appointee. I'm just curious, Ben, from you and Rev, I think we have to be very candid here. What concerns
I mean, they even bringing up Trump.
do you have about the racial animus that we are seeing so much of play?
So we went from wanting to know the details of that night. We only got to the part when the father went to the house to get the keys and the phone. And now we shifted all the way from, we don't care how the rest of that night ended. Now we're talking about once the body was discovered and the racial tension in Mississippi.
In this case,
Well,
you or Rev, whoever.
all I'll say, and then defer to Rev, you want to believe that this is a child, that everybody's going to do their level best to find out what happened, so these brokenhearted parents will know what happened to their child. In time, we've seen Christine and the family be attacked just for asking questions. What happened to my child? Trying to say, no, we want to question this part of the investigation, that part of the investigation, because day one you said no foul play, but tell me now, what are you doing to be able to get us to the truth? And that is, it causes them sleepless nights. We talk at night. And so trust, but verify. We are trying to cooperate everything we can do to say, hey, we want to help, but we want you to give them a thorough investigation. We want you to do for him what you would do for your child.
Rev, I'm going to come to you in a sec, but you brought up something then about attacks. And certainly as journalists, we have a keen eye, and I have noticed that the narrative around this story has shifted to the threats that are going to the young men who was with Nolan. They've hired attorneys who previously represented Donald Trump in cases. They've gone on very MAGA-friendly podcasts. And I just want to make sure that we keep the main thing, the narrative to the victim, to the actual child who died. And I'm curious, Christine, if you can weigh in on what threats have you and your family experienced?
So there have been a big smear campaign, just not only professionally, but personally for me. And
they attacked your nursing license.
yes, so it started out with 1-star reviews of people saying they saw.
And anyone who's watching this live now, or anyone who's going to watch this on the replay, I'm really going to ask this question. Someone smearing the name of the mom, but everybody talking positive about Nolan Wells. What weight does that really carry? Everybody says Nolan Wells was the greatest kid ever. Everybody says Nolan Wells entered a room and he lit up the room. Everything should be focused on Nolan Wells, not personal. Everything should be focused on Nolan Wells. Nolan Wells was a great man, a great young man. He would have turned 19 on August the 19th. I understand that people were trying to do defamation to her character. That's fine. But at the end of the day, this does not bring justice for Nolan. Speaking about your own personal defamation of character does not bring justice for Nolan.
Me, my office verified that these were incorrect. And then it went so much as to someone contacted the Board of Nursing, and then that opened the investigation for the professional misconduct. There was no evidence presented for that claim. And the investigator I spoke with, he said, we have to do our due diligence. I said, I understand it. I respect it. He was like, I'm sorry it's coming at this time. I was like, no, I get it. Do what you have to do, because I know who I am. I know what kind of care I give to my patients. I know the relationship that we have. And I'm grateful that my patients, a lot of them are still trusting and loving in the care that they know they're going to get with me. And so these attacks are not going to, it's not going to break me. I have to find out. We have to find out what happened to Nolan. That is the only question we've ever asked. We've never blamed anyone. We've never tried to smear anyone. I know I heard something about the picture. That picture was sent to me because
This is a picture of him on the boat.
With people.
Yes.
And what it was is they were like, the person was like, Miss Christine, the information is incorrect. This is what he was wearing. Because initially he was in black shorts, which again, that is the information I received from Warren verbally and via text. When she sent me that picture, I was like, oh, completely different color. These are like a blue-gray short. So we have to correct that. But I'm grateful. We are grateful to all of you. Thank you for keeping our son's story alive. And thank you so much, Tiffany, for having us.
I think that's part of our assignment here, our responsibility. So often in newsrooms, we have to defend and define Black life and defend and define our own humanity. And so it makes a difference. The same way in other newsrooms, when you see someone and you feel like they're familiar, that so happens that they resegregate newsrooms and lay off Black journalists en masse, that goes away. So the people in this room have a keen interest in this story because they see your humanity. And that's what we center in this conversation. Rev, put that in historical context for us, because as I look at Mississippi, I don't have to tell you of all people some of the immediate thoughts that surface for us here.
Well, when I got the call from Ben Crump and he had the parents connected and they told me the story, I'd not heard the story. I heard something about some in Mississippi. But when I heard the details, the thing that jarred me from a civil rights point of view, and I've been working, Ben has come National Action Network for 20 some years on a case, and then from there on and on and on. And if it's not a civil rights position, we don't get involved. When they told me that law enforcement said there is no foul play, that's a prejudgment. And I said, wait a minute. They said, the parents repeated me, I said, they said this 2 days after it happened. And how do you investigate and there's no foul play and you don't even know what happened yet? So that's what perked my interest. So I said that, well, we'll be involved and we'll help to the best of our ability. Talked to another day or two. I said, y'all come to New York, we'll have a national press conference. That's how we broke the story. The first national press conference they did at our headquarters, National Action Network. And then all of a sudden it was all of this attack for getting involved. And they asked me to do the eulogy. I said, we'll take care of the funeral. Tyler Perry called me and said, no, I'll take care of it. So the thing that bothered me, one, it was prejudgment. Second, the parents of the guys that were with him started talking about they was going to sue us for getting involved. And
so we're going to stop it right there. That was Nolan Wells' parents' side of the story, which shifted very quickly after they started speaking about getting to the home. Doesn't look like we wanted to talk about the full night, but we just wanted to get to certain parts, which I understand. I understand that everybody has a role in this, even myself, right? My side of this or my thoughts or facts could come off a certain way as well. So I do understand that. I'm not negating that, but it's just hard to follow if we are really trying to get justice for Nolan, or are we focusing still on the history of Mississippi? And if you feel like there's no way to get justice for Nolan because of Mississippi, why are we dividing so hard? Why are we causing so much division if we feel like, hey, Mississippi is the problem? But the most important thing is justice for Nolan Wells. So that was the parents' interview.